The New York Giants had their best season in 7 years, largely due to the improvement of their franchise quarterback, Daniel Jones, and the hope is he has even more room to grow in year number 2 under Brian Daboll. Now, the career for Daniel Jones leading up to this point has been really filled of up and downs. He came in as a rookie replacing Eli Manning and actually put together a fairly good rookie season in today's standards. He completed 62% of his passes for 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, and Giants fans were fairly optimistic about Jones and his development heading into year number 2. But Jones would actually do the opposite and not really improve in his second and third season, and I honestly personally believe it had largely to do with the coaching staff led by Joe Judge. You combine that weak coaching staff with not a lot of great weapons, some of the worst offensive lines in the league, and Daniel Jones was quickly becoming labeled a bust by Giants fans and NFL fans across the NFL landscape. But before deciding to move off of the former first-round pick, the Giants organization decided to give him one more season to really prove himself in the NFL. Who was in that organization, you may ask? Well, it was Joe Schoen, the Buffalo Bills assistant general manager, and Brian Daboll, the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator. And at the time of last season, this was seen as a really good hire for the Giants. Daboll was one of the highest sought-after coaches in that coaching cycle, but I don't even think the Giants organization or their fans knew exactly how good of a head coach they were going to get, as Daboll won Coach of the Year last year and really brought the Giants back to being a competitive team. I mean, before the season, people were picking the Giants to win 3, 4, 5 games. It was not very common to see people picking them to make the playoffs, and I think most people viewed last season as the start of a new rebuild for the Giants. They weren't sure if Daniel Jones was going to be the quarterback of the future. They had a very young team that had a lot of flaws and holes all over the roster, so for them to overachieve that much, have a winning season, win a playoff game, and honestly just show some competence, which the Giants were lacking up until Daboll was hired, it was huge for them. Now a lot of people are optimistic about the Giants, and I think a big reason for that is how Brian Daboll began to turn around Daniel Jones and develop him as a quarterback. I mean, I already talked about his career arc and how he came into the league as a rookie. He looked pretty polished and ready to go, and then in year number 2 and year number 3 he really struggled, and a lot of people had given up on him. But then you insert Daboll into the picture, and Daniel Jones probably has his best season as a pro. He completes 67% of his passes, the highest of his career. He goes for 3,200 yards, the most of his career. He threw for 15 touchdowns, but only had 5 interceptions, which was the lowest of his career, and a 92.5 quarterback rating. And if you remember early in Daniel Jones's career, the selling point on why he would not be the quarterback of the future was largely due to a lot of the mistakes that he made. He continuously led the league in turnovers. He seemed to be very mistake prone, and many people just assumed that that was always going to be a part of his game. But a big reason why Daboll did get the job in the first place was the work that he did on Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. If you remember, when Josh Allen came into the league, he was seen as a very raw prospect with a ton of tools to be a top echelon quarterback. In the first couple years of his career, you could see that he was making a ton of mistakes. He was super inaccurate. And then the Bills brought in Daboll. He coached him up. He brought in a fairly quarterback-friendly system, and we saw the leaps and bounds in the year-by-year improvement for Josh Allen, and now he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So me personally, I wasn't necessarily surprised that Daniel Jones had his best season under year 1 of Brian Daboll. And at his best last season, we did see that Daniel Jones can be a very effective quarterback in the National Football League. I think something that Daboll utilized more than past Giants regimes was Daniel Jones's running ability. I remember watching random Giants games in the early portions of Daniel Jones's career and seeing him just break off a long 20, 30, 40-yard run. I mean, I think he's a lot more athletic than people give him credit for, and I think Daboll realized that as well. So this past year, we saw a lot more play action. We saw a lot more design runs, and because of that, Daniel Jones also had his best rushing season. He ran for over 700 yards. He had 7 touchdowns, and that brings another element to the Giants offense, which can make it harder for defenses to stop. But the last month or so, I've been making a lot of update videos regarding other players working out, how they've been performing in minicamp, and in doing that, I stumbled across some Daniel Jones highlights of his offseason workouts, and I found some pieces of those workouts fairly interesting. It seemed like from a lot of the passes that Daniel Jones is working on his off-platform throws, the ones that we see Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen do those crazy sidearm passes, it just allows you to make tough throws when your feet aren't necessarily set or you don't have the perfect arm angle on throws. It also seemed like he was working on his release a little bit, just making sure it was more fast and fluid. And then just his deep ball throwing, that's been a criticism of Daniel Jones throughout his career. He hasn't pushed the ball down the field a ton. I think that has to do somewhat with the weaponry that he's had on the outside. But I think with going into the season, with all the moves that the Giants made on offense to get him some new targets, that is going to be a bigger vocal point for Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones in 2023. Probably the most surprising and most proven weapon that the Giants got this offseason was Darren Waller via trade from the Las Vegas Raiders. He's a former Pro Bowler in the 2020 season. He had back-to-back 1,000 yards in 2019 and 2020, and he's proven he's one of the most electrifying and dynamic tight end receiving threats when he's healthy. But that's really the only reason reason why he became available and the Raiders decided to cut him loose is his injuries. I mean, in 2021, he only played in 11 games, and in this past year, he only started 6. But there's no doubt if he's available to stay on the field, he's going to be a massive upgrade compared to what the Giants had last season at the tight end position. And then they also signed Paris Campbell, the former second-round pick out of Ohio State, to a one-year deal. Paris hasn't necessarily lived up to his pre-draft hype, but he did have a pretty solid season last year for the Indianapolis Colts. Over 600 yards, 3 touchdowns, 60 catches. So it's just another viable target, another depth piece for the Giants wide receiver core, which dealt with a ton of injuries last year. But someone who did take advantage of the opportunity and emerge late in the season for them due to those injuries was Isaiah Hodgins. He was really the wide receiver 1 for the Giants down the stretch, even had 100 yards in the playoff game against the Vikings. So now you bring him back, he gets a true offseason to build some chemistry with Daniel Jones and learn the offense. I expect him to be even better next season. But the Giants also got last year's Biletnikoff Award winner in the draft in the 3rd round in Jalen Hyatt, and he was one of the best deep threats in the draft, and that is huge for the Giants, who did lack that over-the-top speed. No team in the NFL had fewer 20-plus yard receptions last season, so to get a guy like Hyatt, who's known for his deep speed and his ability to separate downfield, I think will definitely be a huge addition for their offense. So I do think the weapons got improved for Daniel Jones this offseason, but a unit that the Giants have been working on for years and pouring premium pick after premium pick into, I think might finally be pretty good in the offensive line. You got a very young tackle duo and former first-round picks in Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. Andrew Thomas has emerged as one of the best left tackles in the league. Evan Neal was up and down last year, but I still think he can be a very solid and capable right tackle. They drafted their new starting center in John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota in the 2nd round of the draft, and they have 2 veterans at guard and Ben Bredson and Mark Lewinsky, who have a lot of snaps under their belt. But the offensive line was improved last year. I think it's going to be even better this year with another step of development for Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal, and a new starting rookie center who has a lot of upside to be a really good player. But now we've reached the point of the video where I do have to talk about Saquon Barkley. I know this is kind of a sensitive topic for Giants fans and running back fans across the league. I know I've talked a lot about Daniel Jones in this video and how his improvement last year was huge for the Giants. I also want to pay my respects to Saquon Barkley. He was fantastic last year as well. He really had a career resurgence. He's dealt with a lot of injuries the past couple years of his career. So for him to come out last year and set a career high in rush yards, to have another double-digit touchdown season, I think he showed his importance to this team, to this offense, and I definitely think that they need him back if they want to be successful in 2023. I know there's a lot of speculation regarding Saquon Barkley and his contract, if he's going to be extended by the Giants, if he's going to play this year out on the franchise tag, or if he's going to hold out. It's just not a fun situation for both sides, but I do think the Giants and Barkley are going to come to a conclusion in the end. There's been some reports from Adam Schefter that both sides are not too far off of compromising and coming to a conclusion on his long-term deal, but it is unfortunate how the running back market has become. But if all else fails and the Giants and Saquon are not able to come to a conclusion on his contract before the season starts, I still do believe that Saquon is one of those players that has the integrity to play out the year on his franchise tag. Even though he would be super upset about it and still be wanting that long-term deal, I don't think he would pull a Le'Veon Bell and sit out for an entire season and practically ruin the entire team morale. But I'm expecting big things from Daniel Jones in a year or 2 under Brian Daboll. He's got everything he needs to take another step next season. The offensive line is solid. He's got some more weapons, and now he's got familiarity with the offense. And with how open the NFC is, the Giants really could be a dangerous team if we do see some improvement from him. But let me know what you think about Daniel Jones and how many touchdowns you think he's going to be responsible for in 2023. And also let me know how many games you think the Giants are going to win next season and if they're going to make the playoffs for the 2nd year in a row. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.